All right, diving right in, folks. Welcome to another deep dive with us. And today we're looking at something that might seem pretty straightforward on the surface, right?
Yeah.
You've got Zelensky meeting with Trump,
Yeah.
but we've got two sources on this meeting,
Right.
and they are telling wildly different stories.
Yeah.
One's all high drama in the Oval Office, shouting accusations, the whole 9 yards. The other source, it's all smiles and handshakes as they're signing this big U.S.-Ukraine mineral deal. So our job today, our deep dive, is to try to figure out how these two totally different versions of the same event could possibly both be true. Like, what really went down in that room?
Yeah. And, I think to even start to get a handle on that, we have to remember what was already going on between these two.
Right, the baggage they brought.
Exactly. Like, both our sources do say there was tension, right? Like, everybody knows this wasn't exactly a friendly get-together. Trump had just made that huge policy shift, siding more with Russia and the whole Ukraine war thing.
Yeah.
And then, he even goes and calls Zelensky a dictator.
Ouch.
So, yeah, not exactly starting off on the best foot here.
Well, source one definitely doesn't sugarcoat it. It jumps right into the drama, says Trump lays down the law practically from the get-go, like, make a deal or we're out.
And Zelensky, he doesn't just roll over, He comes right back with, we're holding our own here, thanks for asking.
Yeah.
It's almost like he's got this little dig in there, too, like, we're doing just fine, even with how much you've helped.
Don't patronize us.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, don't even try that with us, buddy.
But that's just the tip of the iceberg, right? Source one says even J.D. Vance, the VP, he gets in on the action, starts accusing Zelensky of being disrespectful to Trump. And we got to remember, Vance is like Trump's right-hand man. So that's got to ratchet up the tension even more.
Oh, yeah. It shows you that, like, the whole administration is on the same page here,
Unified front.
But Zelensky's not backing down. He even tells Vance to, like, stop yelling at me. I mean, can you imagine being a fly on the wall for that?
Oh, man. Talk about awkward.
Total diplomatic train wreck, you'd think.
And then source one hits us with this bombshell. Zelensky basically says, straight up, that Trump's just parroting what Putin's been saying.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so Trump's going on about all the aid the U.S. has given and how Zelensky's running low on soldiers. And Zelensky just hits back with, yeah, wouldn't have lasted a few days, right? I heard that from Putin, too.
Bold move right there.
Really?
He's not just defending Ukraine. He's trying to show everybody how closely Trump's words are matching up with what Putin wants.
Yeah.
Risky, for sure, but it shows how determined Zelensky is.
You get the feeling he's kind of done with the BS.
Yeah, totally.
And just when you think it can't get any more heated, Trump goes off on this completely random tangent about Biden, how he's not a smart person. It's like, what does that have to do with anything? Makes you wonder what's going on in his head.
Maybe just trying to throw Zelensky off, Or maybe that's just how Trump rolls, who knows? But it definitely makes things even more unpredictable.
Well, source one wraps up by saying they never reached any agreement on a ceasefire, and Trump leaves saying Zelensky's not ready for peace. It sounds like a total disaster.
From that perspective, yeah, like a complete failure.
But then source two comes along and kind of flips the script. It's like, yeah, things were rough, but guess what? They also made a big deal.
Right.
Like this major agreement about minerals. The U.S. gets access to all these valuable resources in Ukraine.
It's almost like they're speaking different languages.
Total whiplash. You've got all this animosity, and then boom, a major deal. Hard to reconcile those two things in your head.
Yeah, totally. It's like the old saying, politics makes strange bedfellows. 1 minute, Trump's calling Zelensky a dictator. The next, they're signing on the dotted line.
Crazy.
And get this, source 2 says Zelensky actually rejected the first version of the deal.
Really?
Yeah, because he wanted the U.S. to promise they'd protect Ukraine, give them some security guarantees.
Makes sense, given everything that's going on.
Totally. But Trump said no to that. He was all about, like, getting a return on the U.S. investment in Ukraine.
So it was all business for him.
Seems that way, yeah.
Yeah.
But somehow they managed to find common ground. And there's this great quote from Trump in Source 2 where he's talking about the deal and he's all excited, like, we'll be digging for all those resources.
So he's spinning this as a win for him.
For sure. It makes him look strong, like a tough negotiator who gets things done.
So how do we square these two totally different versions of the same meeting?
Well, maybe both sources are just showing us different sides of the same coin, Source 1 is all about the drama, the clashes, the personalities.
Right, all the fireworks.
But Source 2 shows us that underneath all that, there was also this practical side, this need to make a deal, even if it meant going through all that drama to get there.
So maybe it's not about one being right and the other wrong. It's about seeing the whole picture, understanding all the different angles.
Exactly. And that brings up a really big question. Can we actually separate the personal stuff from the political strategy? Like, were they genuinely angry, or were they just playing the game to get what they wanted? It's tough to say.
It's like trying to decipher some secret code.
Totally. And that's what makes this whole thing so fascinating. We've got this mineral deal born out of this crazy clash of personalities and political agendas, and it could end up changing the whole game of international relations.
Ripple effects, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that's where we'll pick up next time, digging deeper into what this deal really means for both countries.
Feels like we're piecing together a puzzle here, but the pieces are all kind of jagged and don't quite fit.
Yeah, and we got to remember, this isn't just about two guys, right?
Right.
It's the whole global situation. You've got the war in Ukraine, the U.S. and Russia barely talking, and now throw this mineral deal into the mix.
Yeah.
It's like every move they make messes with everything else going on. High stakes, Jess, for sure.
So, okay, let's try to figure out what those moves actually mean. What does this deal do for Ukraine? Like, practically speaking.
Well, for Zelensky, it's got to be a huge relief, at least for now.
Right.
Ukraine needs money, desperately, and this deal gives them a bunch. They can rebuild stuff, roads, power plants, all that. Plus, it helps them with the war effort, obviously.
So it makes them stronger, at least in the short term.
Yeah.
But what about, like, 5-10 years down the line? Doesn't this make them super dependent on the U.S.?
That's the big question, right?
Yeah.
They get help now, but it might mean they're tied to U.S. decisions,
Yeah.
economically and politically.
So it's like a trade-off. They get support, but they lose some freedom.
Exactly.
And what about the U.S. side of things? What's in it for them?
Well, Trump, he gets to say, look, I made a deal. I got all these resources for America, classic Trump move.
Right. Makes them look strong.
Yeah, like a tough negotiator. Plays well to his base, for sure.
But isn't there some risk here, too?
Oh, absolutely.
Getting involved with Ukraine's minerals could pull the U.S. deeper into the conflict. And Trump's always saying he wants to stay out of it.
Yeah, it's a contradiction, right? He wants to look tough, but he doesn't want to get stuck in a war. This deal kind of puts those two ideas at odds.
And what about Europe? How do they feel about this?
Yeah, good point.
A lot of them are already nervous about Trump, with him being so unpredictable.
Totally.
This might just make things worse with them. Like, is the U.S. going rogue, putting their own interests first?
It definitely raises some eyebrows, for sure. And let's not forget the environmental side of all this.
Yeah, that's important. Digging up and processing all these minerals, that can't be good for the environment, right? So where does all that damage end up? It's like this deal is opening up a whole can of worms.
No easy answers here, that's for sure. In geopolitics, there's always more to the story. Every action has a reaction, and sometimes it's hard to tell what those reactions are going to be.
So we've got this deal made in the middle of all this chaos, and it could change everything. But the biggest question is, what happens now?
$1 million question, right?
Yeah.
No crystal ball here, unfortunately. It depends on so many things. What does Russia do? What happens inside the U.S. and Ukraine politically? Lots of unknowns.
It's like we're at a fork in the road.
Yeah.
Each path leads somewhere different.
Exactly. One path, maybe things settle down. This deal helps Ukraine get stronger, so Russia backs off. Everyone's happy, or at least not shooting at each other.
Best case scenario.
Yeah. But then, what if Russia sees this deal as a threat? What if they get even more aggressive? Or what if all this money going into Ukraine just makes corruption worse?
Yeah, that's the dark side of this.
Right, definitely. And then there's the whole global power dynamic. Does this make the U.S. stronger, or does it push Russia and China closer together?
More questions than answers, it seems.
It seems that way, yeah. This deal, it doesn't solve anything. It just adds another layer of complexity to an already complicated situation.
But isn't that how it always is with this stuff? It's never simple, right? There are always shades of gray.
Exactly. It's all about trying to figure out who wants what and knowing that every decision has consequences. You got to be flexible, adapt to the changes as they come.
So what's the big lesson here? What do you want our listeners to take away from all this?
Don't stop asking questions.
Yeah.
Don't assume things are simple just because the news makes it sound that way. Like we've seen today, even a basic meeting can have huge consequences.
It's a reminder that everything's connected. Decisions made in one place affect the whole world.
Totally. And that means we all have a responsibility to stay informed, talk about these things, and push for solutions that make the world a better place.
That's a great point. It's not enough to just watch from the sidelines. We all have a role to play in shaping the future.
I couldn't agree more. It's about talking to each other, even when we disagree, and trying to find common ground. That's how we move forward.
We're not just watching this happen, right?
Yeah.
It affects all of us.
Exactly. We're all part of this, whether we like it or not. And understanding how it all works, that's how we make smart decisions.
Which brings us back to that question you asked earlier. About the future, I mean.
Mm-hmm.
Is this deal coming out of all that craziness, is it actually a good thing for peace? Or is it just a temporary break in a bigger fight?
Right.
What do you think now that we've looked at it from all sides?
It's still really hard to say for sure. It's like predicting the weather weeks in advance.
Yeah.
You see some patterns, but then a million things could change.
So maybe instead of trying to guess the future, we should think about the possibilities. What are some ways this could all play out?
Well, one way, maybe this deal actually does calm things down. Ukraine gets stronger, so Russia doesn't want to mess with them anymore. Everyone's happy, or at least, not at war.
Fingers crossed.
Right. But then what if Russia sees this as a threat? What if they double down and get even more aggressive? Or what if all this money going into Ukraine just makes the corruption worse?
Yeah, there are definitely some downsides to consider.
For sure. And then there's the whole thing about global power, right?
Yeah.
Does this make the U.S. stronger? Or does it push Russia and China closer together? It's hard to say.
So many unknowns.
Yeah, and we probably won't know the answers for a while. This deal, it's not an ending. It's just a new chapter in the story.
Another twist in the plot.
Exactly. And that's what makes geopolitics so fascinating, but also so frustrating. It's never black and white,
Right. Lots of shades of gray.
You got to be able to see all those shades, understand that everything's connected and that every decision has consequences. It's a constant balancing act.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the main thing you want our listeners to take away from this?
Stay curious. Don't just accept the easy answers, Like we saw today, a meeting can seem simple, but it can have ripple effects all over the world.
It's a reminder that we're all connected, and the decisions made by leaders, they impact all of us.
Absolutely. And that means we all have a responsibility to stay informed, to talk about these issues, and to push for solutions that create a better future, not just for ourselves, but for everyone.
That's a great point. It's not enough to just sit back and watch. We all have a part to play.
Exactly. We need to be engaged, even when it's difficult, even when we disagree. That's how we make progress. By working together, by talking to each other, by trying to find common ground.
Well said. So that's it for our deep dive today. Thanks for joining us. We hope you found it informative and thought-provoking. And we encourage you to keep learning, keep asking questions, and keep engaging in these important conversations.
Because ultimately, it's through those conversations, through that willingness to grapple with complexity, that we can create a more peaceful and just world.
That's a perfect note to end on. Thanks for listening, everyone.